Hey up everybody, it's been requested that I do a video of us time when we were kids and we first started work in a steel working career. So let's see how it goes. It's 1976, I've just left school and I've applied for 2 jobs. And one of them was TC Harrison's, because I always wanted to be a diesel fitter, the same as my brother-in-law were. He were a diesel fitter. So I'd had my tests at TC Harrison's. I'd had my interview, so I went back for a second interview. I got the letter from TC Harrison's saying thanks but no thanks, so I'd not got that job. But on the same day I'd also got a letter from the British Steel, which I'd had an interview for, and that also said, sorry, we can't offer you the apprenticeship of an engineer, the engineer's apprenticeship that you've applied for, due to me being colourblind. However, we will offer you a production apprentice job. So, and that's how it all started. So I'd get off the bus at the Plumpers on the roundabout, which is just behind me. I'd walk up Shepcote Lane every day for 6 weeks to go to my new job. And this job started for me on the 23rd of August 1976. So Tinsley Parkside, where everything hot, so steel making, billets, bars, blooms, spring shop, things like that. But down here on Shepcote Lane, cold products. Now, where I am, at the bottom, just across from us here, look. At the end of that fence in there, that would have been the Met Lab. And then would be a gate, and that grey building there would have been where I worked in Narrow Strip. So that place across the road, I'm sure that were Edgar Allen's. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. So there were Edgar Allen's, then there were Tinsley Wire, and then, as I said before, there were that TC Harrison's. So they're a little bit longer than this. I'm going to see if I can try and find some pictures for you, so you've got an idea, or get some sort of idea what I'm talking about. I don't know if this is an ode to the Steelworks, what used to be a... So around about where we are now would have been the Narrow Strip. Used to be a little gatehouse here, and that was the only way in and the only way out. But throughout the late 70s and 80s, throughout the late 70s, there were a lot of construction being done on this Shepcote Lane site. They had a 3rd floor put on the Met Lab. They had a powder strip mill built, what they used to call the compact. People may have seen that. It used to say a vest on the side. It had a large digital clock. Over there in where that grey building is, used to be a sheet warehouse, and then the rolling mills used to be a little bit further down. And then in the late 70s, around about 78, they put a central entrance in. And then so there were like a main office block round about here where we are now. And then there used to be the new way in, way out, central gatehouse, with a large car park in front of it. It's odd to pick up on stuff, what used to be. There's nothing here to jog my memory about days gone by, but I'm going to try and find somewhere to sit down. I'm just going to try and stand a bit, see if I can get in that zone where I can start remembering stuff. It's really hard. It's because you don't. As soon as you see something, it triggers your memory. Like that Brinsworth one I did, when I walked around Brinsworth with my mate, and things just come back to us because we were there. Even though I'm here now, there's nothing that resembles what it used to be. Away from the sun for you. And I'm trying to get myself in that zone, what I can think about, and funnily enough, I'm taking it from them buildings opposite what used to be Edgar Allen's. I'm trying to visualise it that way. So I'll try and get round to some things I know, or what I can think of for you. So as I said, we were apprentices in 1976. We went on day release, and then we had a block release at college, and we did that for 3 years. There were some real proper characters, as there is in all places, wherever you work. But this story, or this video, is going to be about the narrow strip. So the narrow strip consisted of narrow strip mill coal products, and it was split into 3 little departments. It had the annealing department, the coal rolling department, the finishing and warehousing. My mates at work at that time was Pete Knight, Nicky Land, and Don Hutchinson. Don Hutchinson I actually started with. We were like brothers. Yeah, you've heard that saying, haven't you? Brother from another mother. Well, he was like that. We didn't work together, but we used to see each other out to work all the time. So the mates I had in work, well, I had loads of mates, but Pete Knight and Nicky, so I'm going to focus on them two. So Nicky, he worked with me for about 17 years. Now there were 2, I worked in the rolling section of the narrow strip, and there were 4 mills in the rolling section. There were 2 4i Robertson mills which were mothballed. There were a 14-inch Z mill, Zenzimir mill, and a 14-inch Sloman mill. And I worked on the Sloman mill, which basically ran adjacent to Shepcote Lane where I've just walked up. So one of the blokes that springs to mind was a chap called Vic Stockdale. Now Vic Stockdale were one of them like old gentleman types. You've seen these old films, haven't you, where they all wear shirt and ties. Well, he used to wear a shirt and tie to work because we were a rolling mill. It would just smell it and oily. Now Vic used to work, as I say, in a shirt and tie. So he'd come to work, let's say an afternoon shift. He'd come to work on an afternoon shift. He'd walk in, take his gabardine back off, put his overalls on, put his clogs on, and then go to work on his oily mill. Now, he was one of them type, old Vic, where he just walked as slow as possible, like a coffin bearer. There was just no rushing him at all. And if we had a fire, he would have been able to get out of the building. But he was one of them chaps who he'd make a cup of tea as soon as he come on at 2 o'clock, proper tea and all in his enamel pint pot. And it'd take him until tea time to drink it because he used to sup it. So he used to sup it a little bit at a time, all the while like blowing tea leaves away what were floating on top. And then he'd have his snap at 6 o'clock or whatever, make another cup of tea, and that'd last him till he went home. So he'd put his coat on, take off his overalls, put his coat on, put his winkle pickers back on, and then catch bus home. And then Tuesday, rinse and repeat until Friday. There was another chap who worked with us. His name was Mick Howard. His real name was actually Dennis, but for some reason it was just called Mick. Now, because we worked in a smelly, oily mill, we needed a constant supply of rags, you know, for wiping your hands, wiping machines, wiping floors because they got slippy, etc. So we had a constant supply, and we used to get this constant supply in boxes. Now, in these boxes, all these rags that we used to get, some of them were full-on clothing, like jackets, cardigans, jumpers, shorts, trousers, even some women's underwear I remember seeing. Pete Knight, who I mentioned earlier, used to dress Mick Howard up, start at shift in these rags that we used to, or that they could get out of these boxes. Used to dress him up. He loved it all, mate. And then we'd have, thinking about him now, a lovely old bloke, Dennis Ball. He was a roller on that Zenzima mill. He nicknamed me and Nicky the terrible twins, because we were all, whoever walked through mill, we always used to abuse them or call them names. So we got nicknamed terrible twins, and I think that lasted until we finished and all. Yeah, Dennis, during the 1980 strike that we had, he won the pools, and he took us all for a pint with his winnings. That was old Dennis, bless him. So one of the main characters who we used to work with were a chap called Brian Shaw, also nicknamed they used to call him Sandbags before we started, and then he later became known as Cootie because of his bald head. Brian had no family, so all us young lads who had started in this mill, we were like his young lads, and he used to take so much stick off us. It was unbelievable. We used to have these permanent marker pens for marking steel up, and we used to get them in different colours, and obviously we used to get black. So we used to colour his head in, his bald head. We used to colour it in so he'd got hair. So he used to love it. he used to love it, and he used to leave it on for about half an hour, and then he used to rub it off with some Scotch Brite and some trichoethylene. So he used to get this big lump of Scotch Brite, dip it in a bucket of trico, and just rub his bald head until it was flame red, bless him. So one shift, I remember, things are coming back to me now. So I remember Brian, one of the lads, we were having some visitors, so we were like a walk round, because we used to get visitors walking around, like prospective buyers. And somebody shouted Brian over, and they asked him to touch his ankles. So he bent down to touch his ankles, and the tie wrapped his wrists to the bottom of his legs. So he just went like running down the shop as fast as he could. It was such a sight, screaming like a mad banshee, until somebody got some snips and undid him. Some of the things that bloke endured over his years he worked with us. He loved it though, Brian. He absolutely loved it, because we were his family. We'd all he'd got. So having a bit of piss take out of him every day, it was just something he soaked up. Bless him. It had its normal bully boy. There was this chap. I'm not mentioning his name, but he got nickname Beelzebub, the devil. So if we were around, you'd hear somebody shout, the bells. So you knew that he were coming. So instead of saying the full name Beelzebub, he was just known as Beelzebub. The bells, eh? And then we had another bloke, crazy hazy, really angry young man he was. Now, that bloke I mentioned earlier, Dennis, he worked on the same mill as him with another roller called Ray Fox, another fantastic bloke, Ray Fox. And because he really highly strung, this crazy hazy, they used to go up to him, and they used to say, well, not to him, but they used to say to Ray, what's tension like on this one? Meaning, what tension are we using? Are we using high, to roll the strip, high tension or low tension production? So they used to go up and say, what's tension like on this one? High or low? And I was there one day, and one of the lads come up, Ray, what's tension like? And Crazy Hazy turned around and said, that knows what fucking tension's like, it's high. But he had no idea that they meant, what mood were he in? Some of the things, honestly. I'm sure every other department had the same thing going on for them. So, as shift managers then, so best shift manager we had, or I worked for anyway, was a chap called Wolf Tyler. He was a lovely, lovely man. You just could not rile that bloke up. It was just, I don't even think he swore, because everybody swears, don't they? Everybody swore in Steelworks anyway. But you just couldn't get this guy going. So around about 1984, 1985, Wolf Tyler, shift manager, we went through a period of a dip in work where there were no work at all. Kids are out. So there was just no work at all. So I remember one day you could go to work, but you'd only get like 80% of your money. But you went and what you did, you used to have to paint floors, paint machines, paint railings, mark out floors, painting with yellow and black stripes or white, that kind of, you get my drift. So we were at Narrow Strip. We'd done a bit of painting, left his paint pots and that on where we were working. We decided to go for a walk. So we walked down to that Met Lab, and it's about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And we'd gone, there were two other lads who come with us from Inhaling, Tony and Mark. I'll not say the second name, but Tony and Mark. So we goes down onto the bottom car park. I mean, it had a big car park at bottom of Shepcote Lane behind Met Labs. And there was just, it didn't get used at night time because there was just not enough cars there to fill it up, you know, people coming to work in cars. So it just got, it was just empty. So it's pitch black, no lights on at all, and we started throwing stones in car park. Well, at bottom of Shepcote Lane there's a road called Greasby Road, and this house is still there today. Well, all bedroom lights started coming on these houses. And then after about 10 minutes, security came in. At that time they had like a Sierra estate, old Sierra estate, and it was a diesel, so it was a rattly old thing. And as you can imagine, we being quiet, we heard it coming, so we scarpered. Now me and Nicky ran behind MetLab and ran up fire escape, and Mark and Tony, they were like a bike shed behind MetLab's in car park. It was like a bike shed, but there were loads of metal scrap samples, and I remember there were some DeLorean car wings in there. So Mark and Tony ran into this scrap shed or bike shed, and one of them cut his leg open on these DeLorean car wings and these scrap samples. And as I said, me and Nicky ran up fire escape. Anyway, they'd built a shower block in the late 70s just outside MetLab, and this security was sat there outside MetLab facing away from car park, so it was like facing to where I'm sat now. So after about 15 minutes, it's still there, and I thought, well, he's just waiting for us coming. So we were waiting up this fire escape, as I said, for about 15 minutes, and Mark and Tony's in this shed, not being as quiet as they can. So I'm just like, me and Nick, what we're going to do? Well, we'll sneak down fire escape, because we tried to get onto Shepcote Lane, but there was some barbed wire, you know, so anybody couldn't at that time climb over to get into the site. So they were like, as you can imagine, on this fire escape there was some barbed wire to stop you going over, so we couldn't get over. So what we're going to do, I know, we'll stay in shadows and we'll go up car park towards M1, and we'll jump out wall and come in back way there. So that's what we did. We sneaked down fire escape, staying in shadows, collected Mark and Tony from this scrap shed, and we're walking up car park. And car park had them big, like, I don't know, what are they, 20-ton skips? They were dotted all around car park. Don't know what come over me at that time, but I just got this urge to pick this house brick up, what I could see in a glint of light, and I lobbed it into this skip. Well, because it's dead of night and it's quiet, it made a right boom boom. Tony and Mark, they ran past security, and me and Nicky just stayed behind this skip that I'd just thrown this brick into. So they run straight past security, and after about 10 minutes, security car moved off. So he drove back towards where I am now, where Gatehouse would have been. So I'm guessing he was probably looking to see where they'd actually gone. Anyway, we got back into mill, and Wilf comes marching down shop. Who the hell's been in car park lobbing stones at houses on Greasby Road? Don't know, not us, Wilf. Well, I've just had a right effing bollocking for now. Remember, Wilf don't swear. I've had a right effing bollocking for this. You're going to get me sacked. Get them paintbrushes picked up and get some effing painting done. That was all Wilf. Bless him. Talking about shift managers, there was another shift manager. I don't think he was all that bright. He weren't clued up on what we did anyway. So we're moving on now to late 80s. And at that time, this machine that I worked on, this Sloman mill, it went through a period of where it were melting bearings onto ends at rolls. And on this particular night shift, it happened to me. So I'd had this seizure, this bearing had seized up on the end of this roll. We took it out, we'd hammered it off and it fell on, so it fell on floor. We had to call it in, so he comes storming down mill. Where's this effing bearing or whatever he said? I said, it's down here. It's cooling down. So he said, well, gives it here then. Let's have a look at it. I mean, it's all melted and chewed up. So I bent down, picked it up, and it had been cooling off for about 10 minutes. And don't forget, it had been red hot, so now it's like black hot. So I bent down with me weld-all gloves on, and he held his, he says, gives it here. So he held his hands out, and I just dropped it in his hand. And he looked at me for about a second, and his eyes nearly popped out in his head. And he screamed, screaming his head off because he's burnt his hands. Well, he did ask for it. I just remember me and Nicky just stood there laughing about it. Oh, he didn't like me. So the new kid on the block was Coco. Now they didn't call him Coco for naught. So this is like leading up to the 90s. Now the 90s come, and in 1993 we were merged with a company 12 miles up the M1 called Stocksbridge Precision Strip. So the narrow strip were closed and the machines were mothballed. Stocksbridge couldn't meet this demand, so it was decided that they reopened the narrow strip, that machine that I used to work on, the Sloman mill. So they'd made 2 crews up. One worked days, one worked nights, and this went on for about 8 to 9 months. So you could work 12 or 8-hour days, but 12-hour nights. So minimum they wanted were like a 4-hour stoppage. So there were 2 people who worked on the mill, and they had one roll grinder who had to be of like an ex-maintenance bloke who could operate a grinding machine to grind his rolls. Because the narrow strip had been mothballed and it weren't part of the production at Stocksbridge, but there were no maintenance. So if you wanted an electrician, for example, you had to phone Stocksbridge up and they'd send an electrician down for whatever you needed. So this machine that I worked on, this Sloman mill, it used to trip if you swore at it, or if you even get it a bad stare. With that temperamental, it just used to trip. So overloading the motors and anything like that, or going too fast, and it just trip. So what we used to do at the start of each shift, we used to go around and check that the motor room doors were just left on the sneck, or they were just on, so in the event of you did need to go in the motor room for out, which you're not allowed to by law, we could get access. There were 3 doors into the motor room. So one night shift, Coco being me number 2, Miller tripped. So this motor room, it was like one of these 1950s films, black and white films you'd see, and all these electrical controls in the motor room. They were like just black cabinets with massive rear stats and big brake switches, like pull switches for breakers. So Coco had been a bit canny, and when we'd had an electrician down, he'd been in motor room with him, and he'd had a look to see the sequence that he did to reset it when it had tripped, so we could go in and do it ourselves. So on this particular night shift, the inevitable happened. It tripped, so Coco off she trots into the motor room, and I went in with him just in case something bad happened. So these motor rooms had these big thick rubber mats. So breakers had tripped, you could see them, they were in the race position, so they tripped. So now's the time for Coco to put what he's learned into practice. So you went through a sequence, you had to do different things. And then at the final part of the sequence where you'd get hold of these breakers, I mean, I couldn't even reach top of these breakers, and with Coco being taller than me, he just used to reach up and pull them down. So he pulls them down, bang, and they flew back up. So he pulls it down again, bang, flew back up. Third time, pulls it down, and he run and stamped it, like run and kicked it, like to stamp it into place. So anyway, it went back up. So he did it again, and he went and run up on it, and he stamped on it again. You know, like with his leg in air, and it was always kicking a table over, for example. You get me drift. So he's running, is it this? And it stayed in. and that's Mel come back to life, and we just started up again. And Coco, when we did eventually shut down, got a job as an health and safety manager at another company. all the laws that we used to break. So what I'm asking you to do is put your memories in comments below, and let's see, and let's all get talking and remembering times gone by. I mean, from 1976, you know, to 1993, like 17 years of my career were down here. So for now, I'll see you on part 2, where I'm going to cover Stocksbridge site. Ta-da!